You're truly blessed if you haven't yet experienced the loss of a loved one. But for those of us who have, I think we can all agree it can be absolutely heartbreaking. I'm not sure I believe in the 7 stages of grief. Emotions can be mixed. However, I do know that such an earth-shattering experience can often lead to our worst thoughts and feelings becoming amplified as we struggle to come to terms with the news. But life goes on. Life must go on. Otherwise we just fall apart. And through staggering resilience and acceptance, we hopefully find a way to get through in one piece. Such a journey is hard to put into words, never mind a video game. But the Forest Quartet has been a decent attempt to do just that. Stick around to find out more. The Forest Quartet starts with a simple enough premise. You hear the news that Nina, the lead singer and saxophonist of the Forest Quartet, has passed away, leaving the Forest Quartet a grieving trio. A tribute concert is organised in the woods in her honour, but none of the band members are picking up their phones. You quickly learn that they're too busy grieving, and your job as the spirit of Nina is to help them in tackling their problems so that the final send-off can go ahead. The game is more or less split into 3 chapters to match each band member. And as you progress in each chapter, you are given a trickle of information on each of their backstories and personalities. All the characters are likeable, and their problems are relatable. And I think the way the game deals with denial and shame regarding mental health is done with the correct degree of sensitivity. This is to be expected when considering the game's development. The creator, Mads Valshot, created this game using music composed by his father and the beautiful vocals of his sister. In his acceptance speech at the Independent Games Festival Awards, where the Forest Quartet won the Excellence in Audio category, Mads said, "9 years ago, my mum died of cancer. And I didn't know when I started this game 7 years ago that it was about her. She was a singer, and the game's about the spirit of a singer who wants to get the old band back together. And the fact that I've been able to make this game with my father and my sister has just been really an emotional journey and a way to overcome my grief. And I'm just very happy that I can share this message and make a game about loss that people resonate with." This is clearly a very personal game that has been lovingly created, and that comes across when playing through the story. When thinking about the game with that backdrop, and how one might think about the kindness and beauty of our lost loved ones, and how we know deep down that they would do anything to take our pain away if they could, the premise of a spirit shining light and sharing music to help those in grief starts making a whole load more sense. I think the story is wonderfully told. However, because it has been so personally developed, I do wonder whether they're running the risk of trivializing some of the issues at hand. Now, loss is hard. There's not always a happy ending. And I don't think Mads ever intended to say that deep problems such as depression or anxiety can be dealt with easily through friendship, music, or a savior, or that such things are necessarily tied to grief. I mean, at one point in the game, a band member has a panic attack, and you use the spirit of Nina to help soothe him. I just wondered what sort of messages is actually sending, that in the game you can quickly fix these experiences. But I also don't want to take away from what Mads experienced, and whether he used aspects of his own journey to set the stage in the game. Because of this, I don't think the game is meant to be taken as a universal approach to grief. Everyone's different, and we all have our own problems and methods of dealing with trauma. But I do think there's enough in the raw storytelling of the Forest Quartet for everyone to find at least one element that resonates with them. Whether it's running away from trauma, the anger with dealing with it, or finding hope at the end of the journey. I think the Forest Quartet has something to offer everyone, and it does so in a beautiful and compelling way. This game is short. It took me about an hour and a half to complete, and it felt like a good length because the game's not particularly challenging. There are some small puzzles, if you can call them puzzles. I mean, they're not exactly hard. But in my opinion, that's not really the point of the game. I think it's meant to be a relaxing and meditative experience, and accessible. The entire game can be played with one hand. It's incredibly intuitive, with minimal direction needed, and so it can be played by gamers and non-gamers alike. But speaking of it as a game, the movement is fluid, everything works as it's meant to. Some of the linking wire puzzles can be a bit frustrating, especially when you have to jump and then select something and then you select the wrong one. But the puzzles aren't boring, and the game mixes up the types of puzzles as you progress, so it never felt too repetitive for me. Because of this, and alongside the short game time, at no point did the Forest Quartet overstay its welcome. I thought it had solid gameplay for what it is. This game is absolutely stunning despite its gloomy theme. The contrast between the dark environment and the light that Nina brings to the forest is handled incredibly well and is one of the highlights of the game. It does an excellent job of making the world feel claustrophobic but still transversible, and the light effects of the puzzles and the singing once those puzzles are complete feel incredibly impactful. I think the way they've handled the visualizations of mental health issues was top notch too. You know, it's hard to describe depression through a physical manifestation, and I think they've done it in a very insightful and visually compelling way. And of course, for a game about a quartet, the relaxing jazz music is spot on and softens the edge on such a gloomy game. Now, strangely enough, and considering the game won an award for Best Audio, I had an issue with the noise levels. I found the music and dialogue to be a bit too quiet, but after cranking up the volume, the sound effects then became too loud. It's not a massive issue, it's just something I thought should have been better dealt with. I also felt that the dialogue quality could have been better too. Now, I don't mean like the actual scripting or the voice acting, that was all fine. I mean like the actual recordings of conversations. They just sounded like they could have done with some extra editing. Now, it could be that being on YouTube has just made me so self-conscious about my own voice that I hear every single imperfection everywhere. But I don't know, it just sort of sounded a bit cheap, a bit tacky. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the Forest Quartet is a gorgeous and immersive experience with a fantastic soundtrack. I really like this game, and it's so easy for me to recommend that you try it out. It's a beautiful, relaxing and thought-provoking experience, clearly produced with love by the developer Mads and his family. Now, while I think Mads definitely deserves applause and some cash for his creation, I think the current price tag is probably a bit too high. There are a couple of CD keys out there for about $3.50, which is about fair value for this, but the regular price of about £8 is probably pushing it. Whether you choose to pay or manage to get it for free this week, I wholeheartedly recommend you checking out the Forest Quartet. And with that, I'm afraid it's time to say goodbye. I'd love to hear what you have to think about the Forest Quartet, so please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. If you liked the video, please give it a like. If you didn't, by all means give it a thumbs down. If you would like to watch more reviews like this, please consider subscribing to a Nomad in Gameland. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.